Welcome, stream watchers. Like I just said, we are Patapsco Heritage Greenway, and our mission is dedicated to preserving, protecting, interpreting, and restoring the environment, history, and culture of the Patapsco Valley between Daniels and Elk Ridge, Maryland. So we do a little bit of both environmental and historical stewardship. You may have attended one of our history or heritage related events before, or you may have attended an environmental event before. But we do a little bit of both. When it comes specifically to our environmental events, we do that through a few different programs. And you are here today to learn about the Stream Watch program, but we also have some group programs, including watershed cleanups, tree plantings, tree maintenance, and we actually maintain our trees for 3 years that we put in the ground to ensure the highest survival rate possible. We remove invasive plants. We host education workshops. We do storm drain stenciling. So we do a little bit of both storm drain marking, just with the generic markers you see on storm drains, but we also do some more artistic, colorful painting storm drain stenciling. And then finally, the history and heritage components as well. There are 13 heritage areas in the state of Maryland, and because our natural resource history is so unique to this area, we're one of the first heritage areas to really have a strong environmental component, which is pretty exciting. We do say at the bottom, if you want to check out our upcoming events, to look at our website. Like I said before, most of our upcoming events are going to be online or independently. Really hoping at some point we can get back to our outdoor group events. So we like to kind of gather what we call a PhD report card, and these are our statistics that we've gathered since the early 2000s up until the end of 2019. And it really kind of just gives you a good picture of what we've done over the years with all our volunteers. So just really keep in mind, this is all volunteer based, which is phenomenal to think about. So thus far, 137 sites have been monitored. We've had over 21,000 volunteers come out throughout the years. And we work with volunteers from all walks of life. So young kids, retired people, college age, corporate groups, churches. We welcome any and all types of volunteers, and we're so grateful for all of them. We've had 382 group cleanups, and we officially, I think it was in 2018, passed our 1 million pounds of trash removed from the watershed. That's kind of equal parts depressing and exciting. It's a crazy big milestone that we were able to remove that amount of trash, but it's also sad that we had to remove it in the first place. And that comes out to about 519 tons of trash. Thus far, almost 1,300 trees are planted, almost 35,000 pounds of invasive plants removed, or close to 160 environmental workshops, and 621 storm drains marked or stenciled. Yeah, so we've been a little busy, which is great, and we're continuing to grow and to get more volunteers, and we're just really excited to get back out there when we can. I didn't mention this before, but if you do have any questions while this is all going on, I should get an alert that it pops up. But if not, I'll go through the Q&A in the chat at the end to answer questions. All right, so we're going to start pretty basic. Some of you, most of you might know this. If not, that's totally fine as well. But what is a watershed and why is it important? So a watershed is an area of land that drains water from storms into the groundwater streams, rivers, bay, and the ocean. And most of us know that, you know, we are in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. The Chesapeake Bay is pretty famous, so it's probably pretty easy to remember that. But something else to remember is that you are always in a watershed. No matter where you are standing on the globe, your water that is going to be at your foot is going to go somewhere. And every stream has its own sub-watershed. And remember to keep in mind that you can be in more than one watershed at a time. And I kind of like to call this your watershed address. So just as in your normal home physical address, you have your number, your street, your city, your state, and your zip code. It kind of is the same when it comes to your full watershed address. So you might live next to Wildcat Creek, which runs into the Tiber Hudson Branch, which runs into the Patapsco River, which eventually runs into the Chesapeake Bay. So it's really important to keep in mind that they're all connected, because no matter where you are, if you happen to accidentally throw something at the car window or intentionally throw something out the car window, that item will eventually make its way to the largest watershed, no matter how far away you are. The first question I want to ask is, what happens to runoff after it enters a storm drain? So I actually got a little fancy here and created a poll for you all to answer on your end. I really hope it works. Okay, I just launched the poll, so you should be able to answer the question. What happens to runoff after it enters the storm drain? And you have three options, which are goes to a water treatment facility and then enters the stream. It goes through a simple filter under the drain and then enters the stream, or it goes directly into the stream. And I'll give you all about 30 more seconds to answer that before we move on. All right, I'm gonna end this poll. I'm gonna share the results. Perfect, okay. A+ for everyone, this is great. So yeah, it goes directly into the stream. There is no filtration. Some people don't know that, and it's okay if you didn't know that, now you do, but most everyone here in this webinar did know that, so we're off to a great start. Let's get back to it. So runoff from buildings, driveways, parking lots, and roads flow into our streams. When it rains, more water runs off from the buildings, enters the storm drain, and yes, it does go directly into the stream without being filtered. So you really want to think about how any pollutants that are on the ground can easily be picked up in this runoff and carried to our local streams. And of course, our first thought might be, okay, trash, debris that's on the ground is getting picked up, but it's also the things we can't always see. So think about your lawn fertilizer or the pesticides you use, or maybe it's the oil or gas dripping from your car onto your driveway or a parking lot, or maybe it's soap from washing your car. All those smaller things are also going to get picked up and taken into our streams without being filtered. And so if you see here, there's more than just the pollutant issue. There's also when storm drains get clogged with trash and other debris, it can exacerbate issues such as flooding in the area, which we are unfortunately all too familiar with in the Patapsco watershed. It's no stranger to us. So if you see something like that during a big storm, the water may not be able to get down as easily as it would if it was cleared. So it's going to flow over the edges and just go wherever else it can, besides down into the drain. So you get issues like this, where runoff that can't go to where it needs to go, or it's too much quantity, is eventually going to flood local houses and other areas. Let's see real quick. Got a chat. Survey pop-up. Are you also seeing the pop-up? I closed it on my end. Let's see. All right, awesome, it's closed now. Thank you for the heads up. All right. So yeah, as I was saying, runoff, when it can't go where it needs to go, it's going to exacerbate flooding issues. If you're from the Patapsco area, and maybe you're not, but if you are, this is a spot that we actually hold a lot of our group cleanups. It's the North Hammonds Ferry Road in Halethorpe. This is Snyders Restaurant, and it can't exist there anymore because it used to flood so often. So even though the building still exists, the sign is there, Snyders itself actually moved elsewhere because it was experiencing so much flooding being in that flood zone, and it was a huge, huge issue. Okay, second question, also my second poll, but I'm going to make sure to remove it at the end. What two main nutrients are hurting the Chesapeake Bay? And I'm going to pull this poll back up to see what we think. All right, it should be launched and you should be able to see it now. All right, about 5 more seconds, and then I will end the poll. Okay, so most people are saying nitrogen and phosphorus, which is correct. I'm going to make sure I close this now. Exiting out, should be gone. So yes, nitrogen and phosphorus are the two main nutrients that are hurting the Chesapeake Bay the most. And when you think about nitrogen and phosphorus, some of the largest contributors are agriculture, sewage systems, but also the fertilizer that we put on our lawns, which is why it's really important that even though we're just an individual person who maybe has a lawn or has a backyard, that we do our part in making sure we're not using incorrect fertilizers or too much. Let's see. So why are these nutrients harmful? Because we do need them, right? We need them in certain quantities, but what can happen when we get too much of them? So when you have too much nitrogen and phosphorus going into our waterways, they can over-enrich it, and this can eventually get to the Chesapeake Bay. It can cause algal blooms, which block sunlight from reaching areas below. But when the algae actually decomposes, oxygen is used up and decreases in the water. And this lack of oxygen underneath can create stress or kill aquatic animals and bay grasses. One of the key words I think most of us would recognize is dead zone. So when you think about the Chesapeake Bay news or the report cards that come out about it, one of those keywords is a dead zone where there's a really strong anoxic or lack of oxygen area. And so that's typically caused by these algal blooms that use up the oxygen in the water. And then also something to keep in mind is that a certain percentage of these algal blooms are sometimes even considered harmful algal blooms, or HABs. And this happens when a specific species of algae produces toxins. So think of the newspaper stories you may have read about dogs getting sick or dying after swimming in a small pond with algae, or the red tides along the coast down in Florida. These are caused by harmful algal blooms and the toxins that they release into the water. And so not all algae blooms cause the release of toxins, but some of them do, and they can be pretty dangerous. But even if they're not creating toxins and releasing it into the water, they do have that ability to block the sunlight and use up the oxygen in the water, which creates other issues. All right, so what is our Stream Watch program, and what are the main goals, and what do we want to get out of it? So really, we want to recruit volunteers to adopt at least a quarter-mile section of a stream or a section of the Patapsco River. We ask that you pick up litter along this chosen stream at least 4 times a year. We want to train you to monitor and identify problem areas or emergencies that you need to report to us, or you can go directly to the appropriate authorities. You want to develop a baseline of all streams to compare and track any changes over a period of time. And we also want to find locations in dire need of future group cleanups or potential watershed restoration projects. PHG has a staff of about 3 full-time people and a handful of part-timers. So we can't be everywhere at once. And our stream watchers are really our eyes and ears and noses and boots on the ground. They help us immensely to track areas that we may not be able to be at all times. And yes, you're going out and you're cleaning up and you're alerting us to issues, but you also are super important in figuring out, okay, my stream has a ton of trash or it has a ton of invasive that I can't handle on my own. Then you let me know and I'm able to coordinate a group effort to get out there and tackle it with you. And this would normally happen during our normal event season, which we would be hosting in a normal world right now. But whenever you do alert us to those issues, it's something we can add to a future calendar. Okay. Let's talk about trespassing. This is very important, but we just want to get it out of the way now. You do need to determine the stream that you wish to adopt if it's on private property. And so a lot of our stream watchers have a stream in their backyard or a stream along a hike they like to take. We even have some stream watchers who adopt a stream on their commute home from work. So whatever you're interested in or want, The most important thing is that you figure out whose property it is. If it's your own, that's great. You just kind of go about your business. But if it is a private property owner, you do want to get a property owner waiver signed, which I have put in the Dropbox, and that link's in the chat already. If you don't see it, I'll definitely be following up with a thank you email to this webinar with all of those attachments, so you'll get it then as well. If you can't get permission, please let us know. We don't want people going on private property if they're not allowed to. We don't want to cause any issues like that. If it is public land, so if it is, in the park or whatnot, we ask that you check in with the appropriate agency or office, and I can definitely help you with that. So don't feel like you shouldn't adopt a section just because you're not sure who it belongs to or you're nervous about that. We're definitely here to help and figure it out with you, and we'll make sure you get the right permissions. Okay, so we're going to go through a bunch of things that our stream watchers have discovered over time and things that we are going to ask you to keep your eye out for while you're being a stream watcher. So first things first, shouldn't come as a surprise, but lots of trash. And we have seen all types of trash when it comes in the Patapsco watershed. So big trash, small trash, lots of plastics, unfortunately. But sites like this are not unique, nor are sites like this. There are certain areas that are pretty prone to illegal dumping, unfortunately. The North Hammonds Ferry section that I told you about near the Snyders Restaurant is a pretty popular area for illegal dumping. When we get out there with our groups, we're able to remove upwards of 2,000 pounds of trash from the watershed, and we go out there once or twice a year. But you'll see sites like this where you don't know who it was, what they were doing, when they did it, but all of a sudden, huge amounts of trash just pop up. And even areas with gates, it never ceases to amaze me, but you might see stuff like that, or even more like this. And granted, some of these spots you're not going to be able to handle on your own, and that's totally fine. I just want to keep emphasizing that if it's smaller trash, smaller litter, you feel comfortable cleaning it up in a trash bag as you walk along, that's wonderful. If not, you alert us, we get a hold of the correct authorities, or we get a group out there when we're allowed to be outside again in groups, and we clean it up together. Some more dumping. I'm telling you, we've seen some crazy, crazy stuff. And like I said, nothing surprises me anymore. Just another thing, human and pet waste. Yes, we have found diapers empty and full. If you feel comfortable cleaning it up and throwing it in that trash bag you have with you, great. If not, we understand. But we actually do have a pet waste campaign as well. So we're working towards reducing the amount of pet waste that we find on trails and in our parks. And we do have an education campaign. So if you're interested in that, or maybe you find that your stream is really prone to dog waste and dog owners not picking up after themselves, we do have some resources there if you feel comfortable talking to those dog owners, and we can make sure you have those materials to take with you and just help educate people and motivate and really make sure everyone's cleaning up after their pets. So another thing you might see when you're out and about is a lack of bank vegetative cover. So on the left here, you'll see there's a healthy riparian buffer that provides shade. It stabilizes the stream banks. It filters the runoff coming in during a storm. All of this is super important, especially in an area where we get high water levels that are rushing down during storms in the Patapsco. And these banks are really stabilized by the healthy, diverse buffer that you find there. On the right, you'll see there's a loss of a buffer, and this can increase water temperature, can lead to more erosion, can lead to more poor water quality. Many of the macroinvertebrates, or the critters and the fish that we find in our streams, need a certain water temperature and water quality to live and reproduce. And when a stream lacks a healthy buffer, this can really directly impact the biodiversity in our streams and cause a decrease in that biodiversity. So this is just another example. You'll see there's a lack of a buffer. The stream's just going through an open field. And then afterwards, we have a tree planting. It looks small now, but it will grow up with these native trees and native shrubs to provide a healthy buffer. And so, we do plant trees as an organization. We are always looking for more tree planting sites. So definitely something to keep your eye on. If you notice there's an area that could really use some trees and buffers and shrubs, we're happy to look into it, and it could potentially turn into a future tree planting for us, which would be wonderful. All right, bank erosion, another huge issue. And unfortunately, we see it everywhere in the Patapsco watershed. Just something to keep an eye on. And one of these things we like to do with bank erosion is to track it. So if you're able to get out there, take some photos, maybe you go out a few months later, a year later, having that progression over time is really helpful so that we can talk to the correct authorities, and maybe that's a site that they prioritize for a stream restoration. Unfortunately, we don't have the engineers on staff to do the stream restoration ourselves, but we pass that information along. And if the county or another private firm is able to take it on, then that's great. And so we really just like to track that type of stuff so we can pass the information to the correct people. Some more bank erosion. Another thing we find, especially in this area, are invasive plants. And there are a lot, unfortunately. And invasive plants are bad because they were introduced to local areas from foreign ecosystems and can pose a threat to the native ecosystem. They typically don't have any natural predators. They can have explosive growth. They're able to monopolize the local resources, such as sunlight and space, and they force out the native plants. And they are everywhere. And so if you see them, we try our best to remove as much as we possibly can. It can be a little overwhelming. But if you are a stream watcher of a certain area and you want to take that on, you want to tackle it, we would love to have you do that. So we're just going to go through a handful of the invasive plants that we have in this area. We are going to host another virtual webinar next week, specifically about the invasive plants in the Patapsco and how to remove them, and go into more detail about each one. But I'm just going to give you a quick overview so we can keep going along. On the left, you'll see garlic mustard. It's a biennial flowering plant, easily pulled from the ground. And then on the right, you'll see the multiflora rose, which is a perennial shrub with thorns. You've got the wavy leaf basket grass on the left, and that's a perennial grass with distinct leaves that are rippled and somewhat fuzzy to the touch. On the right, you'll see the Japanese stilt grass. This is an annual grass that has silver hairs down the center of its somewhat bamboo-like blades. It also has a shallow root system and is pretty easy to pull up. On the left, you'll see lesser celandine. This is a perennial flowering plant with bright yellow flowers similar to buttercups. It's a spring plant, which means it emerges earlier in the season in the spring, and it goes dormant again by summer. You'll usually see these in big swaths along forest floors, since they take advantage of the early growing season while there is still sunlight reaching the floor before the trees really start to grow their leaves. And then on the right, you'll see porcelain berry. This is a perennial woody vine with smallish greenish yellow blooms in midsummer, which are followed by these shiny, hard clusters of berries, which you see in the photo. And they can really smother native trees and shrubs by growing up and smothering them. So I think the next photo, yep, here we go. This is invasive porcelain berry, and it's pretty much destroying the riparian tree buffer and just smothering it to pieces. Another one we've got in this area is English ivy. It's an evergreen perennial climbing vine. It, like the porcelain berry, can smother native trees. It blocks the sunlight. It can actually make the trees more susceptible to damage during storms and wind due to the added weight. So if you look at those photos, you'll see those big, big vines going up the tree. And at first glance, it might look like those are the leaves of the tree itself, but it's not. It's the English ivy climbing up the tree, producing its own leaves. So that's just like a lot of added weight, and it's basically suffocating those trees. And so we tackle English ivy by cutting it at hip height in the fall, taking about a hand's width chunk out of those vines and letting it die off over the winter. Otherwise, if you're trying to pull that vine down while it's still alive and clinging to the tree, you might damage the bark of the tree. You might hurt yourself when the vines come down. So that's kind of how we tackle English ivy. A new thing we're asking our stream watchers to look for this year are vernal pools. And you might have attended our vernal pools talk last week, presented by Dr. Sutherland. If you couldn't make it, that's totally fine, and I can follow up here with more information for you. But vernal pools are dynamic habitats with cycles of standing water and periodic dry downs that exclude permanent populations of predatory fish. A few distinct characteristics are that they are isolated from permanent surface waters. They're typically small size and shallow depth. They have a periodic drying hydrology. They have very distinct biological communities, and within our region, in the Patapsco, Maryland region, you usually find them in a woodland context. So they're more than just puddles on the ground that we find when we're on our walks. They're really, really important to the ecosystem and to the biodiversity of these ecosystems. So a few more photos here. You've got some more vernal pools. You see some eggs. I am going to provide at the end in the follow-up email a PDF link to identifying amphibian egg and larvae. If that is really interesting to you and you really want to dig in deeper into the different types, I want to make sure you have that resource so that you can do a little investigative work. But vernal pools are really important breeding habitat for amphibians. They support the aquatic and terrestrial food webs. They can be a stepping stone within the landscape. They even provide pollution removal and groundwater replenishment. They have a natural mosquito control. Your first thought might have been, oh my gosh, that's mosquito breeding ground, still body of water, which sure, there might be mosquitoes at first, but those amphibians and those frogs and whatnot are going to go after the mosquitoes in that area. So it's somewhat of a natural mosquito control when that vernal pool supports the amphibian life. And they're a great connection to nature. Fun to look at, really a nice piece of nature that we can all enjoy. Okay, so the next thing you want to keep in mind as a stream watcher is that there are certain stream emergency issues. And these are things that we need you to report to us as soon as possible. So you might be going out, you might be cleaning up trash, removing invasive, monitoring erosion at your stream. And that's great. And those are things that you can take your time on. But these next few slides are really going to emphasize the emergency issues that either you can report directly to the appropriate authority or to me, and I can get it to them. So first things first, let's see. Open sewer lids. This might be common sense, but just keep in mind that you might smell it before you see it. So that's why I always like to say we use our eyes and our nose when we're a stream watcher. But this is something you definitely want to report as quickly as possible, such as leaking sewer lines as well, or sewage overflow. Just a quick story, in the past 2 Illicit City floods that caused immense damage to Ellicott City and beyond, it was actually our stream watchers who discovered some of the sewer main breaks that were dumping just millions of gallons of raw sewage into the watershed. And we were able to mobilize our stream watchers safely after a certain amount of time, but safely get them out there to take a look at their streams, figure out if anything was drastically wrong and that needed to be alerted to. And it was both times discovered by our stream watchers that there were sewer main breaks. And because of them, we were able to report it and get it fixed way quicker than it would have if they had just continued on until somebody else had discovered it. Another thing to keep in mind is water main breaks. If you see something like that, please, please, please report it. Massive debris jams. This is something, unfortunately, that you come across a lot, especially after big storms or floods. And one of the issues is that sometimes we never know, who's responsible for it. And although we don't ask you to get out there, remove the jam yourself, because that is incredibly dangerous, please report it to us or the correct authority so that we know that they are aware of it and that they can get their employees out there to take care of it as soon as possible. Exposed utility lines. So you can see in this photo, the utility line is actually broken. The cement is cracked open in half when it's about to enter under the bank there. Clogged or damaged outfall pipes. So you can see there that that grate is collecting some of the trash, and even though sure it might be stopping the trash from going into the stream, it is clogging up and would eventually cause some backing up and flooding issues further down the road. Sediment control failures from construction. So legally, construction sites are required to have these silt fences to catch sediment before it enters a nearby waterway, which is great, but sometimes you might see that the silt fence is knocked over or already kind of maybe from a previous storm or wind is blown and not as taut as it should be. So this is definitely something we want to keep an eye out for if there is a construction site near your adopted stream. Sediment itself can affect the clarity and overall water quality of nearby streams, but depending on the location, it can have even more problems. The sediment particles can carry phosphorus along with it, and when the sediment enters an anoxic area, or those areas that are lacking the oxygen or the dead zones, there's a reaction that occurs, and the phosphorus can actually be released from the sediment and enter the water, and this can exacerbate that nutrient overload issue that we already talked about, and kind of keep creating that vicious cycle of over-enrichment of our waterways. Another thing we need to keep a lookout for is illicit discharge, and both of these images would be something that you'd want to report as soon as possible. So if somebody is dumping gas or oil directly downstream, or on the right, it looks like St. Paddy's Day in Chicago, both of these are definitely issues that we want to alert the authorities to as soon as possible. Even if you don't know exactly what's causing it or where it's coming from, it can be fairly obvious if something is an illicit discharge and not natural. Another thing that we like to keep an eye out for is the difference between an oil spill and iron bacteria. So if you look at the photo up on the screen, this is actually iron bacteria, which occurs naturally in slow-moving waters. You often find it on the edges of streams, and it can also appear as a rust-colored slime. When oxygen, water, and iron mix together, they can create the right conditions for iron bacteria to bloom. The iron bacteria oxidize iron for energy, and this process makes the iron insoluble and produces the oily sheen that you see over there. And it can kind of look like it might be illicit discharge or be some sort of oil, but you can easily figure out the difference. You break up that oily sheen, so grab a stick, something that you can just find nearby and stick in the oil, kind of shake it up a little bit. If the sheen immediately goes back together and looks oily all over again, it's exactly what you think, it's oil. If the sheen stays broken up into different pieces, then it's most likely iron bacteria. And it's perfectly natural. It's not an issue. It doesn't need to be anything you need to worry about. But if that oil does come back together to look like an oil spill all over again, that's a bigger issue and something that needs to be reported. Okay, so this white substance that you see along the edges where the leaves are is just something that should be a cause for concern. And the answer is no, because natural sources from decomposing leaves, twigs, or other organic substances can create that natural foam being created along the edges or near the eddies in the rocks. It's usually a light tan or brown. It can be white, but it's going to have more of an earthy, fresh cut grass odor. And like I said, it occurs at many locations, accumulating on or near the bank or in other materials in the stream. So you'll see it a lot more in the fall, late fall, when the leaves have really fallen down and they're collecting in the stream. And it can increase after rainstorm as rainfall transports the decomposed plants to the stream, and it can cover large areas and accumulate in larger amounts. So another photo of, see those white looking foam along the rocks. But keep in mind that sometimes there are man-made sources of this type of foam, and this can come from yard fertilizing, car washing, and we like to highlight that one because that can be a big issue, but also washing machine discharge, sanitary sewer, septic field failures. And this type of foam instead is going to be a little bit of a brighter white color. It could be fragrant or perfumed, smelling like your lavender essential oil wash that you use for your clothes. It can accumulate near the source of the discharge. Although for most detergents, it could be biodegradable and disappear quickly. It's something to keep in mind because if you do notice it, you want to report it as soon as possible so that we, get the correct authorities there before it disappears. And from a leaking sanitary sewer line or a septic field, it'll have a foul odor. So kind of going back to that, using your nose as well as your eyes, and most likely not related to rainstorm and that increased rainfall. So something like this, obviously a lot of foam, bright white, that would be something that is considered more man-made and something that we want to alert the correct authorities to as soon as possible. Keep in mind that a little more detective work may lead you to find the cause of some pollution upstream. So while you will technically be adopting a portion of a stream and you'll be walking along there, many of the issues they face may be coming from a bit further away. So it kind of goes back to your watershed address. So even though your stream is in one spot, it's within a larger watershed. So the issues can be coming from a bit further away. And if you feel up for it and you feel comfortable, sometimes doing a little more digging further along can lead you to that source. So stuff like this, somebody who dumped paint into a storm drain, or something like old pool water and the chemicals that are found in old pool water being drained, and then it eventually makes its way into the storm drain, which directly makes its way into the stream without being filtered. Another thing we're all too familiar with is cigarette butts, and these can take 18 to 10 years to biodegrade depending on the brand and the type. But if you keep finding them along your stream and you're so confused because it's a stream in your backyard and you know you don't smoke, maybe there's an area further upstream where somebody continues to toss them out the window. Another issue is overflowing dumpsters that spread trash and junk during windy days. Another one here, same situation. You got an open dumpster, trash around the dumpster. So these are all issues that may not be directly next to your stream, but it's a bit further away, but it still impacts what you find in your stream down the road. Another issue is dumping leaves in nearby streams. So a lot of people, rake their leaves or keep their yard clippings and their grass and whatnot. And it's just a great reminder that we should not be dumping our leaves and our yard waste into streams. While leaves and yard waste are of course natural, if taken from where they were created and then dumped into a stream where they weren't created down the line, they can quickly suffocate smaller plants and critters, or have that quick overload, that flash of nutrients, which can affect the water quality. And even if you just keep them loosely piled at the end of your driveway, thinking, oh, what's the big deal? Like going back to that windy day, it can easily and quickly get blown into and clog a storm drain, which is another issue as well. Here's another one. So leaking oil containers behind restaurants, or leaking car oil from gas stations and repair shops. Just going back again, this might be 100 yards from your stream, but what's happening there is making its way to your stream eventually. Another big issue, road salt. And we were pretty lucky this winter. We didn't have too intense of a winter, so there wasn't much road salt being put on the ground, but it is something to keep in mind that when you see those excess piles of road salt, it will eventually make its way into our streams. And chloride, which is found in the road salt, is toxic to aquatic life, and it can impact the vegetation and wildlife found down there. And even in the summer, the effects are still noticeable. So Salt Watch is something that is definitely going on throughout our state and beyond with the Isaac Walton League. And it is something we are working on incorporating into our own Stream Watcher program eventually. We don't have all the details pinned down, but we're still working on it. And if you are interested in kind of tackling that next winter, just stay tuned, because hopefully we'll have more information about the Salt Watch. And so yeah, Stream Watchers help us plan our future cleanups, and you never know what you will find. So next, I want to get into more of the logistics of being a Stream Watcher and how you would go about doing that. First things first is Stream Watcher safety. A lot of it might be, you might already be doing it, which is wonderful, but if not, we just like to have a list of things that we encourage our Stream Watchers to do. And that's pretty basic stuff, like bringing a first aid kit, wearing gloves and boots, wearing a safety vest. So normally, if you were to be attending our in-person training to be a Stream Watcher, we would have you graduate with a PHG branded vest and hat, and they're brightly colored so that no matter where you are in the watershed, you can be seen and be a little bit safer. So if you do end up deciding to turn in a form down the road and become an official Stream Watcher, we will get you that. We will get you that stuff when things go back to normal. We can access our equipment again, and we can safely get it to you. But just keeping in mind, avoid touching hazardous liquids and objects, report emergencies either to the correct authorities or to us so that we can do it, take photos, carry a cell phone. I know most of us carry our cell phones anyways, but just make sure you're doing that so that you have a way to call someone if you need help. Always have permission. Tell a friend where you are, bring a friend. This is super important. I love solo hiking. I love doing it, being in nature on my own. But I always tell someone before I go, because God forbid, you know, I twist an ankle and I can't get out of there. You want to make sure you're telling someone. So I always go with the tactic of texting a friend and saying, you know, I plan to be gone for 2 hours. If you don't hear from me by then, text me that I'm home. Shoot me a text. So just making sure someone always knows where you are, or even better, always bringing a buddy into the field. Remember your trash bags for your litter pickup, bug spray. Don't lift heavy objects. We encourage kids to participate. It's great to get them started young, but if they are going to be going out with you, make sure there's an adult supervisor. Use hand sanitizer at the end, and always, 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 always check for ticks. We imagine ticks will be even worse this year because we had a pretty mild winter, so it's super important to always check for ticks. Another thing we always ask you to do is to document. So if you really want to become an official stream watcher after taking this training, we ask that you fill out the volunteer application and waiver. And like I said before, if you check the chat, let me make sure it is still up there. But the chat should have the link to the Dropbox. And yes, I'll send it again at the very end just in case you all can't see it. But the Dropbox folder will have the application, and that's the one where you say what stream you want to adopt, and if you have a buddy you'd want to go with. No big deal if you don't, but it just makes sure that we can know who you are, how to contact you, and what area you're monitoring. The StreamWatch visual survey, also in that Dropbox folder, is the initial baseline survey. It is a few pages long. It's a little bit more in depth. It gives us a great overview of what your stream and its current conditions are like, so we can track it over time. This is a one-time thing. So we just ask that you do it once, you take all the measurements. There is also an instructional packet within that Dropbox folder as well, to kind of provide you guidance. But if anything is confusing or you don't understand it, please shoot us an email and we'd be happy to help you out with it. But like I said, a one-time thing, and then every time after that, it's a much simpler form. And that much simpler form is the StreamWatch activity form, where it's an online report that documents the date, the pounds of trash removed that you did, any sort of notes about changes and things from your initial survey, or in any emergency issues that need to be reported. Please send us photos. That's the most important thing that helps us the most. Photos, photos, photos. GPS coordinates are great. And because we all have our smartphones now, we can easily write down our GPS coordinates. And most importantly, if you are going on private property, make sure you have that right of entry and liability agreement and verbal permission that we can definitely help you with if you need it. So why do I need to check in every time I walk the stream? This helps us document volunteer hours and pounds of trash removed for future grant funding, but it really ensures that we can spot any changes and react quickly to problems before they get out of hand. So going back to the Ellicott City flood situation, because we were able to have our stream watchers report back to us, we were able to get that solved much, much quicker than it would have if, you know, it's just the authorities going out and doing their best to find issues. And after the first report, which is that visual survey, it only takes a quick online form to submit to us. So it's pretty simple. And most importantly, we like to hear from you. We want to keep in touch. We want to thank you for all your hard work. And we really do care about you participating, and we're really appreciative of it. So like I said, you can enter your data directly online. Our website is patapsco.org, and our environmental page has a Stream Watcher tab within it. So looking at the green arrow here, the StreamWatch visual survey is that first-time survey that you go out. It's multiple pages. I recommend taking a printed version out into the field so you can write your notes down. But the nice part is that you can submit it online directly once you click on that link there. If you'd prefer to just keep it all handwritten and then scan it and email it to me, that's totally fine as well. But if you'd prefer to just do the notes in the field and then submit online, that's your quickest way of doing so. And then the top link right there, the blue arrow, is the Stream Watcher activity form. And that's that simpler form that you'll fill out every other time you go out. It's really easy to just fill it out when you get back. So going on to more photos, this is just an excerpt from that StreamWatch visual survey, so you can kind of see it's asking you about water quality, and there are definitely more questions in there, but I just kind of wanted to give you a screenshot of what it looks like, where you can just click things really easily on the web page. And then this is the StreamWatcher activity form. Yet again, pretty simple: name, phone number, email, name of watershed, the date. There's more to it than that, but it's all really simple stuff, just being able to enter it directly into our website. But something new we are trying out, which I want to talk about here, is our Water Reporter app. This is an app you can download on your smartphone. And it's pretty great because it's a way to use your smartphone in the field to take notes. It allows you to pin your GPS location on the spot. You can add a photo. You can write in comments and notes. And to get us kind of all on the same page, we are asking that you use the hashtag Patapsco Streamwatch. This allows us to go in later and check that hashtag and see if there have been any reports. So at this point, it's a new app for us. We're kind of testing it out a bit, but we want to make sure people use it either for their note-taking ability while in the field, or directly as their activity form. Because if you choose to take it into the field and do all your reporting from there, we can go in, find the hashtag, but maybe you also just want to use it as your note-taking ability in the field, and that's totally fine as well. So I want to show you a couple photos. The Water Reporter app looks like this, and these are just screenshots from my own phone. If you create a post, which is the first photo on the left, you can click photo, you can do your GPS location down below. Let me see if I can point it here. Laser pointer, there we go. Yep. So here you got the camera button that lets you take the photo, and down below is the GPS location. So this is what it looks like when you go to set your GPS location, and the red dot is where you were. And then this is what a report looks like once it's been submitted. So my really fancy photo of my Patapsco hat that I took and I was really excited about. But I just did a test run. So I did hashtag Patapsco Streamwatch, test 1, 2, 3. So this is the note-taking section below once it's been submitted. But it allows me to go in later on and to search that hashtag so that I can see what you've submitted. So one more thing is that you may have gotten this far and you might be thinking, this sounds wonderful. I want to be a stream watcher. I want to adopt a stream and have it be mine and take care of it. And that is wonderful. I'm so excited you're here and you want to do that. If instead you've gotten out of this, vernal pools are really cool and all I want to do is track vernal pools, that's also totally okay. And vernal pools are really cool. And so if that's kind of what you want to take away from this, that's wonderful. But the thing we want to ask you to do is take a little bit more detail when it comes to tracking vernal pools. So whether you are taking your Water Reporter app in the field and you're entering the notes section, or you're submitting on our website to our Streamwatch activity form, we have a please describe anything else section. There are a few things we ask you to track. So we're looking at the area size of the vernal pool. You can do this with a tape measure, or you can kind of count your steps. And it's okay if it's an estimate, but counting the steps it takes to walk around the pool, and then maybe think, your foot's X inches long, and we can do the calculations. We're asking for the depth of the pool, so you can either measure with a stick or you can estimate with just by looking at it. We want to know the land use type. So is there any development visible? How close is it? Maybe your stream is, 50 yards from some businesses on Route 40, something like that. So if you're able to see development from where you're standing, that's a good, important thing for us to know. We want to know what the canopy cover looks like. And so you can do this just by looking up and estimating the percentage of the sky that has tree canopy when you are looking up. And don't overthink it. Don't worry about the perfect accuracy, just kind of doing your best to estimate. We also want to understand the vegetation. So in the vernal pool and the surrounding 100 feet, what types do you see? So are you seeing shrubs, trees, grasses? Try to give us a good picture of what you're seeing there. And then finally, animals. So are you seeing the salamanders? Are you hearing or seeing the frogs? Do you see eggs or larvae? And like I said, I'll follow up in the follow-up email with the guide to the different larvae and eggs. And so I know looking at this page right now, you might be thinking, how am I supposed to remember this? But I will follow up with a document with all of the details we like to know about vernal pools in the email that you use to register for this webinar. So like I said, if you want to be a stream watcher and do all of the above, that's great. But if you're just looking and you're excited about vernal pool tracking, that's totally fine as well. And we'll be happy just to have you do that. But we do need those details to make sure that we're tracking it the right way. And then one of the most important things is that revisits to that vernal pool are encouraged. We want to determine the dry and wet dates, since vernal pools are not permanent. So it really helps us to understand the fluctuation there. All right. So thank you for helping us protect the Patapsco River watershed. Something we want to let you know is that our Spring Stream Watcher Week is May 17th through the 23rd. We're trying out a new thing where we have seasonal Stream Watcher Weeks. And these are weeks where we really encourage you to go out and visit your stream and report back to us. and it gives you time to go out and do that initial visual survey. I want to emphasize that during this time of social distancing, if your stream is in your backyard and you can do this while being safe, that's great. And if there's a stream that you can't access right now, we totally understand. Please do not feel like you need to go out and visit it. Hopefully when all of this is done and we can go back to our normal lives, you'll be able to visit that stream. But at the moment, we understand that you may only be able to go to a stream that's near your house or within short walking distance, and that's totally fine. So if you are able to do so during social distancing, just be smart about it, be safe, wear gloves, take the gloves off as soon as you get home. But yeah, so Spring Stream Watcher Week, May 17th through the 23rd. We would love to encourage everyone to go out that week to visit their stream, and we will be promoting our different stream watchers and all the things they're doing that week. So we're really excited about it. And then finally, please consider becoming a member and or joining us for future events. This is all my contact information here. Let's see. You can email me with any questions you have. I'm working from home remotely, as is everyone else, so I don't have access to our PO box at the moment, but I will when things go back to normal. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Like I said, we're going to have future webinars. We're not done here. If you have ideas for future webinars, I'd love to hear it. But we'll have one next week that goes into more detail about invasive plants. And I will send the registration link for that in the follow-up email if that's interesting to you. So yeah, I'm going to go into our chat and our Q&A and see if there's anything I've missed. Let's see. Is there a similar stream watcher program for the Patuxent watershed? I know that the Patuxent area has the Watershed Stewards Academy. Many years ago, I kind of did a train the trainer program with some Patuxent watershed stewards, where I did this exact training with them and offered them to use it amongst their own. So I'm not 100% certain if they ran with that. I can try to find, I think I have a couple contacts for the Watershed Steward Academy, people who are doing some monitoring in the Patuxent. So I'll try to find that, and then I can add them to the follow-up email if they want their contact information out there. Let's see. Great. So are there any questions about the Streamwatcher training or about PHG in general? I know it's a lot of information to get on a virtual webinar, but I appreciate you all hanging in there. I'm going to send that link to the Dropbox one more time. Let's see. Let's see if I can get it up here. So, all right. So the Dropbox link should be in the chat. And like I said before, this has all the downloadable documents to submit your official form to be a stream watcher. You can send that to me directly, the hzinner email, so that we can get you in our database. It has the property permission form. If you know the property owner, or if it's you, you don't need to worry about it. Like I said, if you're not sure, please don't hesitate to reach out. We can definitely help you. It has the initial survey form. It has the instructions to go along with the initial survey, and it has the contact list for emergency situations if you'd prefer to see it all on your own. But if you're not seeing it, let's see. Let me try this again. Are you seeing it now? Okay, perfect. All right, awesome. Sorry about that. And then there's the contact list form. So the contact list form does allow you to directly contact the correct authorities if you want to take charge and do that. But like I said, feel free to let us know about emergency issues as well, and we can take care of it. But that's about it. I would say you should expect a follow-up email from me with all the information I promised to send along to you by tomorrow afternoon at the latest. But again, happy Earth Day. I'm so excited. It's sunny out. I plan on getting outside in a little bit, but I hope you all are staying safe and healthy during this time and enjoy the fresh air while it's not raining. Thank you.